Okay, I'm filming something a little different today. I was working on this earlier. I just grabbed a piece of Phragmites reed and I'm making some foreshafts and some points uh, that are bird points, actual bird points. But I haven't finished them yet. Let me get that on film. I'm going to put some sinew on this one. Hold on. So what I've done is I've created a tang on this piece of wood. I'm not sure what kind of wood it is, but it doesn't matter. It's a hardwood, and I put a tang on this. I sanded it down, just rough sanding, so it would fit in there with a friction fit. I haven't straightened it. I think I mentioned that already. I haven't straightened this Phragmites reed yet. Anyway, I need to wrap a bunch of sinew around the tip to create a point that can skip on the surface of water. Yeah. So I've got some sinew lined up for that. Some elk backstrap sinew. It's old. Yeah, it's not the new stuff I just got last year. This is old stuff. So I'm going to use up my old stuff first for this kind of thing. I'm going to be doing my channel news tomorrow. I was supposed to do it today, but I said, man, I got to get some stuff ready for the video. I want to show you what actual bird points are. Points that were used to kill birds. Because there is such a thing as bird points, but they're not what people normally call bird points. There are various points on arrows that can be used or that were used to kill birds or to hunt birds. So that's what I'm working on. I'm just going to dampen the sinew with water. I never put the sinew in my mouth. You'll know that after watching my channel for a while. I always use water because I don't know if the sinew has any bacteria or whatever. Probably not, but I'm not going to take a chance. The last thing I need is an upset stomach. So let's see. This has got some thick spots in it. Right? We'll do this a little at a time. So right now it's kind of damp. Which is good. I'm going to try to use up all these strands. But I don't like these little pieces that hang out. Overlap too far. Extend too far past the start point. You'll see. Anyway. I'm going to use the Type On waterproof this time. Normally, if I want to go with something a little more natural, I just use Elmer's glue, but I don't want this stuff to come off because they're going to be permanent, like patterns for future. Now, there's a channel on YouTube that shows how to make these points that skip on water to shoot ducks and other waterfowl, I suppose. And there's a formula, or there are guidelines for where to put the wrap on the point. so that it will skip well. And there's also dimensions on how much wrap to put on here, right? The height of it. I'm just going to guess. I'm going to eyeball it. Oh, yeah. I never just wing it. Never. Yeah, I wish. I wish I never just wing it. Anyway, so I'll do this on video. Figured since I'll be out here anyway. Yeah, I did something similar a few weeks ago, but I didn't film it because I was still experimenting. What was I doing? I was trying to do some woodworking with stone. That just takes a lot of getting used to. Yeah. So I said, nah, let's get back to the regularly scheduled programming. I'm trying to remember. I didn't even look for that video that mentions how tall this wrapping needs to be. I don't think it needs to be all that tall, so I didn't get that much sinew. And I need to wrap an arrowhead too, so I can't use all of this. Yeah. I think it just needs to be like a 1/4 inch tall. And I didn't bring enough sinew, although I got more. And I'm just guessing. So I'm not going to put the full amount of layering on this because it takes a long time for it to dry if I put too much on. But you get the point. This is going to be a little bit taller once I get all the sinew on there. I'm trying to flatten out that lump that didn't get covered up. Okay. Usually I try to cover up those lumps. It doesn't matter too much because I'm going to wrap over this anyway. Now, which tribes or where did we see this kind of point used in the past? I don't remember. I'll have to look it up and put a link to it or something. Link to the video that I saw it on. Anyway, it's an interesting concept to have these skipping arrows that skip on the top of the water. I guess I should have detailed that a little more clearly or explained it a little more clearly. All right, so I'm going to lash this point on, but I'm not going to use glue as far as hafting glue or pitch or anything. I'm just going to lash it on with sinew. Yeah. This is just a demonstration or pattern type of thing anyway. So I'm not going to sell it. I just need something that I can refer back to. All right. This is like a Washita type point. Let's see, I need to put everything in frame here. This is still slightly damp. It dries up quick though. So a little more water and then the glue. What do I use if I'm not using something modern? I use hide glue or fish glue. Fish glue is my favorite because it stays in a liquid state at lower temperatures. I don't have to work in a shop that's 90 degrees. You know what I mean? Now, sometimes these are just lashed down with a V, but I'm going to go across horizontally. I put too many turns down at the bottom. I don't want it to bunch up too much. So once over, yeah, and then go. And once around down here. I gotta make sure I do a complete wrap down here. Or a complete revolution down below. Or I don't know. See, before I go up onto the notches, I make sure I wrap at least one 360 and then go up and come back down and another 360 before I go back up again. Because if you just go up and then over and then up again and then down again and just zigzag it like that, it doesn't fasten very well to the shaft. So you go up and down and then around and then up and down and then around. Okay? And I guess that was thick enough and long enough that I could do the whole thing in one shot. Yeah. And then I check the alignment of the tip. If it stays put when I'm doing this, I got to make sure I hold this steady. If the tip stays put when I turn it, this very tip, that means it's centered. Yeah. It doesn't look like it's staying put because my hand is all kind of jiggling. Yeah, it's good. So I'm going to use a little space heater to warm up the sinew. It helps it to dry faster. This is going to be like watching paint dry. Yeah. I'm just going to do this long enough for the tight bond to not be sticky. Yeah. Enough for me to touch the sinew without sticking to it. Now, this is not a bird point, but I did this together with the other ones because it saves time. Yep. That's why I'm doing it together. And I thought it might be interesting to see, for you guys to see. So normally there would be hafting glue in there like pitch or something between the stone and the wood. And it would ooze out around the edges and you wouldn't have any gaps between the sinew and the glue. You know what I mean? There wouldn't be any flying, so-called, what I call flying sinew wrappings that don't have anything underneath. There'd be glue underneath everything, so everything is solid. There's no sinew suspended in midair anywhere around the point. Now they did do that sometimes. I've seen actual artifacts with sinew still on it that have that flying sinew wrapping. But the points that I see that on, or that I saw it on, were large points, not small ones like this. Points that were quite large, yeah. But on, true arrow points, I haven't seen any like that. There's always some kind of glue underneath the wrappings. And a lot of times over the top of the wrappings as well. Now, how much wrapping do you put underneath? I usually go about 1 inch, but it varies depending on how much sinew I got, mainly. Yeah, mostly how much sinew I have. If I have a long enough piece, it works just fine with just one piece. And if it ends up being real long, it's just incidental. I notice on real artifacts, if there's a set, the wrappings down here on the wood are variable on the set because some have long ones, some have shorter ones. It's not a standard size. I guess what they did was they just went with the flow as far as the length of the sinew. Didn't really matter too much as long as you get a little bit on there, like 1 inch or so. But I'm going to be doing tests. Yep, I'm going to start doing tests soon to see if it actually matters how much wrapping you got. So this is actually not even 1 inch. It's like 5/8. 1 inch would be like that much. That's a lot, right? So maybe 3/4 would be an average. All right. So I'm going to wrap a little bit more sinew around here. Now, did they actually use sinew for these points that skip on top of water? Yeah, as long as you cover it with some sort of pitch or waterproof hot melt, some kind of evergreen pitch, whether it's spruce gum or pine pitch or whatever, but it has to be waterproof hot melt. You can use other types of resin from other trees, but it's not waterproof. Yeah, it's water-based. A lot of these resins that you can use for hafting arrowheads actually dissolve with water. And it's good for arrowheads that it doesn't matter if they get loosened up with water or not, as long as it does the job, right? But if you're going to be using this arrow around water, you can't have the glue getting loosened up. Nope. Can't have the sinew come off. So it's going to need a little bit more than this. And I think the front needs to be nice and smooth. And it takes some practice to get good at skimming these across the water. You know what I mean? There has to be an angle in front. I'm pretty sure it needs to be like a 45-degree angle, or maybe even less than that, maybe 30 degrees. So it'll skim without too much friction, or without it. When it hits the water, you don't want it to slow down too much because then it'll sink too soon. It won't skip across the water. I think I need a little more than this, but I don't want to put too much more than this because it won't dry right. It won't dry properly. Yeah, okay, so here's 2 of them. They both fit. See, what's cool about using cane or a drilled out shaft, you can either drill it out or use cane. Cane is easier, of course. This is actually Phragmites reed, but you can use a hill cane or river cane. Common reed doesn't work as well as Phragmites. Phragmites has a thick wall. This type, anyway. I can only find this in the Southwest at elevations of 2,000 feet and above. This Phragmites that actually works for arrows, because when you look up Phragmites reed, they'll show you common reed or Thatcher's reed. They won't show you this good stuff. This is the good stuff. The walls are thick. See how thick that wall is? This is the good stuff, and you find it in the Southwest. I find it mainly in West Texas, North Texas, and into New Mexico. And I've seen it in southern Oklahoma. Those areas. It's probably into Southern California and Arizona as well, but at the higher elevations. But I haven't seen it. I've taken a drive through there, but I didn't see it along the highway. Usually you'll see it growing along the highways, and then you stop and check it out and see if it's the real thing. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. Anyway, I was going to say what's cool about it is you can interchange points. You just need to make the foreshaft fit. And if you have a stone drill, you can standardize these hollows with a stone drill. You can make them standardized, and then you can make all the foreshafts the same diameter to insert, and you get a friction fit. Friction fit. So yeah, they did make arrows like this for warfare. I suppose for hunting as well, but the ones I've seen that I think are for hunting have a smoother transition here. For warfare, you don't need a smooth transition to do some serious damage on a human. All right, you just need 2 or 3 inches of penetration, and it's lethal. Okay, so this is plenty. It'll stop right here, is what I'm saying. See that? It'll stop. The penetration will stop right there if it's not a smooth transition. But I've seen Apache arrows like this, so they don't need a lot of penetration. Okay, this one is shouldered, so there is a smooth transition there. Now, I'm thinking that it's necessary because it's going to skip on top of water. Okay, now, those two, the one that skips on water is a bird point, right? But I've got some other ones I was working on today. This is a blunt. It's also a bird point. See that? I put a grain weight, but this was an old grain weight because I used this on an atlatl dart, and I fired it a couple times. It works well, but I sanded it down so it would fit into this arrow shaft, and I did not reweigh it. So let's reweigh it. This is Osage orange, by the way. 327 grains. So you can make these pretty substantial. I would probably not use this much on an arrow because it slows the arrow way down. But if it's just a blunt, if you're just shooting squirrels or whatever, or something that you can just knock out, like with a rabbit, you can knock them out with just this slow-moving, heavy arrow. That's fine. But it's going to throw off your trajectory. So the shaft itself, let's just say that it was perfectly straightened and all the nodes were sanded down and cut to the right length. I'm just going to weigh the shaft. It's not perfect right now, but I just want to get an idea. $274 grains, 274, yeah. And let's say I had a 40-pound bow. I would need 130 grains more to get it to 400 grains for a 40-pound bow. Usually what you do is you multiply the bow poundage by 10 to get the arrow weight in grains. So I would have to cut this way back to get 120, 130 grains more. I mean, to make it so that this is a 400 grain arrow if I had a 40-pound bow. You know what I mean? And all I would need to do is just keep removing wood off the top. And you can make all of these the same grain weight if you have more than one of these blunts. But if the shafts are all kind of wonky and different, you can adjust this and then make all the arrows the same. You won't be able to interchange the foreshafts. This is I consider that a foreshaft with a blunt tip. Okay, you won't be able to interchange them if you match the arrows exactly the same. Cut these down so that the grain weights are all exactly 400 on all your arrows. You won't be able to interchange these tips. But if you're shooting close range, you don't need to interchange them. It doesn't matter all that much. The grain weights matching perfectly only matter with longer distance shots. Yeah. Anyways, so that's a bird point. This is a bird point. I did this earlier. These are Osage. It's split and then sanded. They're squared off because they're just splits, right? And I just broke them, sanded them down a little bit, and then wrapped with a few wraps of sinew. Easy peasy. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to stop the penetration. And then I just made the tang to fit with a friction fit into the arrow. Same arrow. So what I'm going to do later on is I'm going to do some tests with arrow that has interchangeable tips. That way the arrow is always the same weight and we can compare tips to see how well they do. And they're all going to be, stone pointed tips in my experiments. In this particular instance, I'll be doing a channel news segment on these bird points. But yeah. And why is this down so low near the shaft? Because that's the way I saw it in a book. That this was very low with a long tip for lots of penetration. Yeah, but it needs to stop so it doesn't go too far. So they just tie these little cross hatch sticks. And in the book, these little cross pieces were made from wire. But I imagine that back in the day, they would just use a strong hardwood, an ironwood or something. And probably maybe thicker diameter than what I got here. Anyway, these are like inch and 1/8 long, 1 1/8 inches long. So about the width of a hunting point. And what is it, 30 seconds? A little bit more than a 16th. Not quite an eighth of an inch in width on these. It seemed to be a good size. You don't want this too bulky and too heavy, I don't think. Anyway, I was pulling on these. They seem pretty rigid. They do move a little bit, and they're not perfectly aligned, but as the sinew dries, it kind of pulled everything a little bit off center, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so that's another type of bird point. You don't want too much penetration on a bird like that. You want to bring it down and then save your arrow too. And then there's this blunt here. It's just a tapered piece of wood. Again, friction fit. All right, it goes down almost to the node, or this does touch the node on this one. But you take advantage of the natural taper of the wood. In this case, it's a split piece of wood, so there's no natural taper, but on this one, there is a natural taper. See, this is a thin end of the shoot, and then this is a thick end up here. And what I did is I just tapered it toward the tip here. So it's fattest in the middle. All right, so you can take advantage of the natural taper here for the friction fit. And there's a natural taper inside that hollow as well. Okay? So it works really well with just the natural shoots. So yeah, this is a blunt. Shoot it just like anything else. And you shoot at birds with it. It's another bird point. Now there's some other ones that I've seen that have uh, forks in it on the end, but I can't guarantee that those are for birds because they could also be for fish or frogs or whatever. But these, I would not shoot a fish with that. I mean, I suppose you could stun the fish, but the only way to get fish, in my experience, of any good size, is to shoot them with something that you can retrieve them with a string or a rope or something, and not just try to stun them and then I guess swim out after them and pick them up. I don't know. Anyway, I find it much better to use a harpoon type setup for fish and not something like this, not even with a forked one. But I have seen forked ones. I was going to make one, but this just took me all day to get all this stuff ready. So I said, no. And what about crescents on the end? Can I put a crescent? Does that work? Well, yeah, but instead of using a stone crescent, I would use a bone crescent. Yeah. Stone will snap. And it doesn't make much sense to me to put a stone across this way, even if it's a crescent. It would make more sense to put a piece of antler, actually, that's a lot stronger. It can resist the shock. And I think that those could be used as bird points, but I haven't seen them as artifacts, with a cross piece or a crescent in the front. But there are discussions where, yeah, that would work as a bird point if you just put a crescent on there. Yeah, I've heard that, but I don't think so. I don't think that's what they used. But I could be wrong, obviously. So all of these have tangs of the same diameter to fit within this one arrow shaft. Okay? I sanded them all down meticulously so that they would all be nicely friction fit in this shaft. And then if I had a stone drill that matched this, I could make sure that all my arrows were reamed out to the same diameter on the inside. Yep, and I picked shafts that have this, reed shafts that have very similar voids in them, and just do the fine tuning with the stone drill. Now, can you also drill out wood that has a pith? Yeah, it just takes forever, but it can be done. You can drill out relatively soft woods that have pith, like ash. It's relatively soft. It's not like trying to drill out hard maple or something, or an ironwood shoot that has a pith in it. Let's see, what else can I say about this? I got a bunch of stuff that a friend of mine sent me, a bunch of dowels of different woods that I can use for foreshafts. So I might start getting into that. I got lots of dried osage. I mean, I think this is dried for like 20 years or something. I think he told me that this is from a batch of fence posts that were stacked up for over 20 years. So that's what I made a lot of my stuff out of for this. I made this out of really old osage and these little splits here. This one I made a long time ago, but I'm not sure, what stash I got this one from. Anyway, so there you go. 30 minutes, 34 minutes. Yeah. I like working on this on the side. Gives me a good break from napping. And now I got something to discuss tomorrow. Alrighty. There you go. That's it.